All right, so I have supported and must be true both here as a question type. However, I kind of teach them the same. I think they're very, very, very similar instead of having another one to memorize. And then we're going to go and talk about flaw, but just to note, both of these are in the top down category. So we're going to be taking stuff from our stimulus and trying to find that in our answer choice. All right, so our goal for must be true and most strongly supported is to find the answer that absolutely has to be true based on our stimulus. And then for most strongly supported, it's like very, very, very likely, like 95%. Some people say that they're different question types because must be true are with 100% certainty. Most strongly supported is going to be like the ones that we just did, like with that elephant. Like elephants are more likely to do CrossFit than non-martini drinkers. But if you approach this question type the same, you'll be totally fine. All right. I think this is, oh, let me go back. Okay. So what this is going to look like is how we're going to approach conclusion. So Giovanna, go ahead and read this one.
There is no one good enough to date my friend Giovanna. Liam is interested in my friend Giovanna.
So we read this and this was a stimulus and this is going to be a must be true question. We want to go ahead and predict, can we put these two premises together and kind of think, oh, is there anything else I could say because of these two sentences that would also be true? So go ahead and think about this for like 30 seconds. All right, so what would be a valid inference, Tia? Oh, I can't hear
I can't
you.
hear you.
Y'all can't hear me? Can you hear me
You
now?
talk.
Lean in. I think you just have to lean in.
Oh yeah, I am. Sorry, I'm like laid back chilling. So a valid inference would be that Liam isn't good enough to date Giovanna.
Excellent. What would be an invalid inference here, Sabrina?
Liam can date my friend Giovanna.
Ooh. Oh yes, Leah, like wait. Invalid. Yeah, we wouldn't know that. Yeah. So some people here would say stuff like Liam can't date my friend Giovanna, which actually Liam can't date. Yeah, that would be invalid because technically we don't know if he can or cannot date her. We just know that he's not good enough to date her. This doesn't mean that Giovanna will never date. So that might be a confusion. Giovanna will never date. Just because nobody's good enough to date her doesn't mean nobody will ever date. She won't ever date. Excellent. So that simple approach is kind of what we're going to do for our must be true and most strongly supported questions. We're going to read our stimulus and really understand it. A lot of these stimuluses are going to have a lot of conditional logic in them. So those are those if then statements. So whenever we said earlier, every car that goes to the shop is going to get washed and get mats. Like we know that that's a conditional statement. It's going to be doing a lot of linking these up. We're going to read the stimulus and understand it. We're going to then read the question, understand our job. We'll see it's must be true or most strongly supported. So once that happens, we have to treat everything in the stimulus as true. So just like how premises are always true, whether or not we agree with them, premises are true. We're going to treat the whole statement as if it's true. And then just kind of take a second to predict, is there anything else based on the info provided that would also have to be true? So just like the statement we just did, how we kind of did that easy example of how we can predict that, that's what we want to do on these if we were to link it up. Now, there can sometimes be multiple things that could happen. So the previous one, it could be on like, there could be more than one valid inference. And so the goal doesn't mean like, oh, our predictions have to be perfect. Our goal is just to know what can we link, like to know what are they trying to get us or what direction we're trying to go. And then for must be true questions, these are great to get rid of wrong answers. Like if we can't guarantee it or we know that something isn't correct in it or we can't prove it, we just want to cross it off and not even think about it. So these are our top down questions. And so oftentimes wrong answer choices are too strong. So like the previous example of Giovanna, it might say Liam will never date or Giovanna will never date. Like that never is too strong. And then whenever you go through them, we'll just ask ourselves, does this answer have to be true? And the correct answer choices oftentimes will just restate one of the facts in the passage. They might use a synonymous word for it, or they might negate the sentence. So if they said, every car that goes to the shop will get a car wash. So an answer choice might say, I didn't go to the car wash, therefore I didn't go to the shop. You know how like we could do the contrapositive there? Sometimes it will do it backwards. So I'll say that one more time. So our stimulus might say every car that goes to the shop gets their car washed and gets new mats. And then if I said Emily doesn't get new, so a valid conclusion might be Emily didn't go to the car wash, so she did not go to, or Emily did not get new mats, so she didn't go to the shop. Even though that doesn't follow the exact same sentence, we can see how that's saying the same thing. Does that
Is
make
that a contrapositive?
Contrapositive, yep. And then how we practice drawing our own inferences, sometimes the correct answer choices will just combine two or more of those facts for us to infer or to conclude something new. And all the time you're going to see wrong answer choices that take the info too far or make inferences that we can't guarantee, but they sound really, really good. And this is kind of like Anna's example of the elephants like CrossFit. Like we can't guarantee that they actually like it, but that can be such a tempting answer to cross off. Or not cross off, I should say. So our must be true stimuluses will say things like must be true. So if the statements above must be true, or the other common one is properly inferred. So that just means properly concluded. And then how those look different than most strongly supported is, and it'll say instead of must be true, it'll just say most strongly supported. Or it might say which of the following best completes, versus if it was a must be true, it would just say which of the following completes the passage. Or for this last one, most strongly supported would say like most logically completes, which like must be true would just say logically completes. But once again, for those, don't overthink them. Treat these questions as if they're the same. Like what some people say is must be true questions, the answer will be like 100% certainty, where most strongly supported is like 95% certainty. But we'll still go through them the exact same way. So does that all sound good so far? All right, so go ahead and just read this. Everybody go ahead and read this stimulus silently.
Okay, what you just moved on us?
What?
You just changed it.
What did I change?
We were reading about smokers.
Oh, I'm sorry, there you go.
Okay.
All right, Ahmed, can you read the first sentence for us?
Yeah. A certain gene can be stimulated by chemicals in cigarette smoke, causing lung cells to metabolize the chemicals in a way that makes the cells cancerous.
All right, so what does that mean?
So it's pretty much saying that a particular gene in our body, I guess, has a chemical reaction from cigarette smoke.
Yep.
And then that causes lung cells to metabolize in a way that makes the cells cancerous. So pretty much it turns the reaction turns that particular cell cancerous, I guess.
Excellent. Yeah, no, exactly. We have this gene that gets stimulated, like the chemicals in the smoke, I guess, stimulate this gene, and then that causes the lung cells to metabolize the chemicals in a way that causes cancer. Absolutely. All right, Anna, can you go ahead and do the second sentence?
Yet smokers in whom this gene is not stimulated have as high a risk of developing lung cancer from smoking as other smokers do.
All right, so what does that mean?
The smokers, even in whom this gene is not. So even if this gene is not stimulated, they have as high of a risk of developing lung cancer from smoking as other smokers do.
Excellent. So I want everybody to think about this for 30 seconds. Is there anything else that we can infer based off of these two sentences? And give me a reaction when you have an idea. All right, Ahmed, go ahead and share what your thoughts are.
Oh, again, sorry about that. I didn't know I couldn't go.
No, you're totally fine.
Yeah, so my thought process was that based on this, on the second sentence, was that this particular gene is not the cause for lung cancer.
If we add in the word sole cause, I love that answer. Like that particular gene is not the only cause or not the only thing contributing. Excellent. Did anybody else have any other predictions?
Those who smoke get cancer?
Can get cancer, yeah. If you put can
get cancer.
Excellent. Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and read through these and tell me what your answer is in the chat. This is an example of going with your prediction. What was your prediction?
Oh, that you could get secondhand smoke.
Not secondhand smoke. What did you say about the gene?
Oh, that it wasn't the cause.
Yeah. Which then I did add in not the soul. But then when you read A, did anybody else laugh? And you're like, wait, this is too easy, right? We got lucky with it being A. But I do think that if you didn't make this prediction, a lot of these other answer choices sounded decent though.
Yeah, especially C for me. That was my second choice. But I was looking at words like more likely, then I thought maybe no.
Okay, no, let's dive into it. So I messaged some people that responded early. Who did I say to do? I think Tia, B.
Yep, you have me doing B.
Yep, awesome. So why is B wrong? And this is your blind review, especially for must be true, most strongly supported, for us to get faster, thinking about why these answer choices are wrong and making sure we really see it. So anyways, Tia?
I said that B was, in my mind, I said that B was wrong because it's bringing in outside information that's kind of irrelevant because the argument in both the premises talk about smokers. Like whether this gene has been activated or not, it's still talking about smokers.
Yeah, do we know anything about non-smokers?
No.
No.
And also you can still get cancer from secondhand smoke, but whatever.
Right, but it doesn't matter, right? Like we don't get to know that. We don't get to bring in outside information. All right, who has C? Taylor, go for it.
My thought process is that it just kind of like contradicted what was said, because it practically says that even if it's not stimulated, you still have a high risk, versus this is saying that if you are stimulated, then you are likely to develop cancer.
Yeah, this is the exact opposite. R says even when smokers who have the gene is not stimulated as high of a risk. So we can't say smokers in whom the gene has are more likely because we have no idea. It's not true. All right, Sabrina, do you have D?
I have D.
Or who has D? Whoever has D, go with D.
Okay, I have D. I read it as that this D is like kind of making an assumption or like assuming that the gene can be caused by other chemicals, but we don't like know that for sure. We only know that the gene is caused by chemicals in cigarette smoke.
Yeah, do we know anything about other chemicals? I think like whenever we hear this, like our worldly knowledge is like, yeah, the gene is more likely by cigarette smoke than some other chemical, but we have no idea about this other chemical. So we don't get to say that. And then Sabrina, what about E?
E's wrong because the second sentence literally says like smokers like who don't have the gene or it's not stimulated have as high as a risk of developing it. So we can't assume like people who don't have the gene at all or theirs isn't as stimulated that they're less likely to develop lung cancer.
Excellent. Our stimulus doesn't ever compare like this is more likely or this is less likely at all. So any answer choice that is talking about more likely or less likely is a huge turnoff. Excellent. Did everybody think that was pretty easy? All right, so here we're saying that we have 12 gene 1, I'm just gonna call it gene 1 and gene 2, even though I know that's not quite what it is, but so the 12 people have we have 12 healthy people with gene 1 and 12 healthy people with gene 2. They both had this diet that had a high cholesterol food. We know that if you have a high level of cholesterol, you have an increased chance for heart disease. And then after 3 weeks, those in the second group were unchanged. So gene 2 was unchanged, their cholesterol level stayed the same, where in for group 1, our cholesterol levels grows 20%. So I love everyone that said that the first group is may have a more likely chance of heart disease. That was excellent, right? Did anybody else, did a lot of people kind of go down that route? So go ahead and look through these answer choices and put your answer in the chat.
I have A.
All right, so do you like it or not like it, and why?
So I don't like it because I think it's already too strong with half the population. This study was only 24 people total.
Yeah, we have no idea who has what gene. Excellent. But I think a lot of people see, oh, 12 and 12, that's 50%, but it's just a study. We don't know about the population. Excellent. All right, who has B?
I do. Like most is a strong word, and then also we can't assume that just by adopting a low cholesterol diet that you're gonna reduce your risk of heart disease.
Yeah, like maybe a person can or two, but there could be many other things that you have to do to reduce a low cholesterol or to reduce your heart disease, right? And is cholesterol the only thing that impacts risk of heart disease?
No.
No. Excellent. All right, what about, I think, Jillian, you have C?
Yeah, I have C. I said it was wrong because you can't assume that the blood cholesterol reaches a certain level. Like that's totally out of scope.
Yeah, that I thought C was the easiest to cross off. All right, and then Anna, D?
So we actually said before that the presence of the first gene would probably increase the risk of heart disease. So, and that says lower, so it's wrong.
Yeah, there's no way that it can actually lower heart disease if those that had it rose 20%. Because what do we know about having a higher cholesterol level? Cholesterol is associated with an increased risk of heart disease. So if one goes up, the increased risk probably also goes up. All right, and then who wants to, Ahmed, do you know why E is right?
I mean, no, that's why I need an explanation. I mean, I don't know, because it says the presence of the APO gene, well, the second one anyway, may inhibit the elevation of cholesterol or blood cholesterol.
So what, do you know what the word inhibit means?
Isn't it like instill, like
prevents.
Prevent?
So the presence of having.
Okay, so it makes sense. I get it.
Yeah, so that might be just a word mix up. So the presence of gene 2 may prevent the elevation of blood cholesterol. I love that it uses the word may. So it's not even definite, right? It's like very loose, like may contribute, like may prohibit or may prevent. And how do we know that? Because in our study, only the gene 1 rose 20%. The second group was unchanged.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I was kind of like considering C. Is it out because it pulls out like outside information by reaching a certain level?
Yeah, what level would that, where do we have any support that those that have gene 2 excrete, like release cholesterol when blood cholesterol reaches a certain level? Like what sentence would you say supports that?
Nothing.
Yeah, so when in doubt, you can double check yourself with that.
Okay.
I have a question. For E, for example, I didn't know inhibit, like the definition. Is there like an ability? Not an ability, but a thought process that I should have in order to help me? Let's say if that was the choice, but I wasn't sure.
What words were you thinking about? Well, one, yes, for must be true, most strongly supported. If you don't know what a word means, if you can cross the other 4 off, go with the one that you don't know what it means. So many of us, if we don't know a word, we ignore that answer choice. I used to do this and be like, oh, I'm just gonna pretend it's not there. Well, really focus on eliminating the other ones and then just give yourself a chance to get it right by going with the one that you're unsure of. But if there's another answer choice that you can for sure support, then obviously we're gonna go with that. And then for this answer choice, inhibit, what did you think inhibit meant, Ahmed, again?
Honestly, I didn't. For me, I thought it was like instill. So, and I didn't even look at that. Honestly, I was looking at them talking about the second gene, which kind of led me away from that because I felt like the prediction was more about the first gene.
It was. Our prediction was about the first gene. However, this goes to show, like, our predictions aren't always going to be spot on. There can be more than one correct answer of must be true. The goal of predicting is just to think about, okay, what does this mean? So if it means that gene 1 has an increased risk of heart disease, what does that probably mean about gene 2? There's a lower risk for heart disease compared to gene 1, rather than thinking of all of them at once. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so then moving on. All right, go ahead and try this one from start. So read it, come up with your prediction, and then come up with your answer.
And how do we know when you've assigned us to something?
Whenever people submit their answer, I'm just giving people an answer via the chat.
So because addictive drugs are physically harmful, their use by athletes is never justified. Purists, however, claim that taking massive doses of even such non-addictive drugs as aspirin and vitamins before competing should also be prohibited because they are unnatural. This is ridiculous. Almost everything in sports is unnatural, from high-tech running shoes to padded boxing gloves to highly specialized bodybuilding machines. Yet none of these is prohibited on the basis of its being unnatural. Furthermore, we should be attending to far more serious problems that plague modern sports and result in unnecessary deaths and injuries. Therefore, the use of non-addictive drugs by athletes should not be prohibited.
Awesome. So what's going on there? That's a lot.
So basically the author talks about like addictive drugs are harmful and that they're never justified. But then purists are just saying basically even things that are non-addictive shouldn't be allowed just because they're unnatural. So then the author goes on like that's ridiculous because everything in sports is unnatural and that we shouldn't even be focusing on stuff that's unnatural because there's more serious stuff or problems going on with sports in terms of like unnecessary deaths and injuries. And then they conclude just on the fact that non-addictive drugs by athletes should not be prohibited.
Awesome. Great job. So this isn't, you wouldn't have to find the main conclusion and subsidiary conclusion for this one since it's a must be true. But what would be our main conclusion?
That's ridiculous.
Yes, the last sentence. And what's our subsidiary conclusion?
This is ridiculous.
Excellent. Great job. Is everybody feeling more confident with that? Awesome. All right. So then what was your prediction, Emily?
So I had said that aspirin and vitamins are non-addictive drugs that may be unnatural but should not be prohibited.
Excellent. Yeah, you're saying that things that might be unnatural shouldn't be prohibited. All right, why is B, who has B? Giovanna, why is B wrong?
Well, because of the conclusion says that the use of non-addictive drugs by athletes should not be prohibited. Wait a minute. He was saying that everything that's unnatural, but that's okay. I put it wrong because that wasn't the conclusion of the argument.
Right, but we're not looking for the conclusion of the argument. We're saying this is like, which of the following can be inferred? So what can we conclude by it? So anybody else know why B is wrong?
You said what?
I said, so why is B wrong? There is nothing unnatural about the use of non-addictive drugs. Does our argument say that non-addictive drugs are not unnatural?
He's saying everything is unnatural.
Yeah, so this is wrong because we say
Right.
non-addictive drugs are unnatural.
Right.
So
He's saying everything.
right? Yeah.
Right.
All right, what about C?
So the addictive drugs by athletes should be prohibited because addictive drugs are unnatural. I said that was wrong because, I mean, it's part of the argument, but it's only part of the purist argument. It's not part of like the overall argument. And I know you said we're not trying to find the conclusion, but it's not even part of the conclusion, really.
Okay, so if we don't, let's clarify. We don't need the conclusion for this. That's actually, so the use of addictive drugs should be prohibited. We just say that the use is never justified. We don't say why addictive drugs are never justified, right? We don't know if it's because we don't know if addictive drugs are unnatural or not. I would assume that they are, but maybe they are. I guess there could be an addictive drug that is natural. Who knows? Great. What about D?
I said that they're making the assumption that modern injuries and deaths are due to addictive drugs, and there's nothing in the stimulus that supports that.
Yeah, maybe the plague modern sports is like dehydration or something. Who knows? It doesn't have to be because of addictive drugs. And then what about E?
It's just kind of conflicting because that's not really what the author is saying. That he is saying that it is a serious problem, and he's not really stating that it's less serious than unnecessary injuries.
Yeah.
Like for them.
Do we ever compare addictive drugs to unnecessary injuries? Nope. All right, and then why is A right?
I picked A because although the purist is saying that we should prohibit something that's non-addictive drugs because they're unnatural. The author said that it's ridiculous because everything in sports is unnatural, and then the stuff that's in sports that's unnatural, it's not being prohibited just based on that fact.
Yeah, just the fact that something is unnatural is not a good enough reason to ban it, and that's why it's A. How did everybody feel about that question? Awesome. Okay.